All right, I'm going to jump on.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live crypto AMA session here at Sarson Funds. My name is Ivan Dimov, and joining me tonight is Jahon Jamali, our CMO and co-founder.
All right, good to see you, Ivan.
How you doing, Jahon?
I'm good, buddy.
What's going on in the crypto world? It's a never-ending and never-stopping world.
Yeah, lots going on. I'm going to give folks like a minute or so to dial in here. We're still got 1 minute to go, but yeah, definitely no shortage of topics to talk about tonight. So I'm excited. We've got lots going on in the crypto space. We've got sort of the tailwind of the infrastructure bill story, which is certainly something that I feel like a lot of people are going to end up talking about. So you know, there's lots to discuss. I mean, I think that probably the first thing, and just to reintroduce folks that might be dialing in for the first time, um, I'm Jahon Jamali. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and the co-founder of Sarson Funds. And my side of the business, I run most of our education and marketing programs. So I'm always happy to host these and take Q&A from folks, especially folks that maybe are taking their first or dipping their toe into the water in crypto for the first time. So I always enjoy getting to answer some questions and trying to provide a little bit of insight in plain speak and plain language. Especially as the space starts to develop, and there's obviously no shortage of news happening in the crypto world today. So I think one of the most important things, though, is that crypto now is a political force, right, Ivan? That we've got had the infrastructure bill and ended up getting sort of held up in the Senate by the crypto pay for provision, which I thought was, a lot of people in the crypto world started getting a bit concerned on it. But I think if you look at it from a macro view, this is a really important, important point in the cryptocurrency adoption narrative. And that this really marked the first time at a level of prominence that the cryptocurrency community really showed itself as a political force. And there's a lot of takeaways, I think, from that. You know, not only in the fact that it became such a hot topic of conversation and it became part of like the daily national debate over the course of that latter part of the week, but I think it also demonstrated to the cryptocurrency community that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, right? And certainly a lot of work in terms of educating not only investors and the general public, but educating lawmakers, educating regulators, and there's still a lot of work to be done. But it definitely showed promise, and it shows the capabilities, I think, of the crypto community to be able to uh, you know, push that topic to the forefront of the debate here on what was a hotly contested bill. And I think that only is going to be the beginning of cryptocurrency being a very focal point of regulatory and financial and spending type of legislation as we move forward. I mean, certainly candidates need to start getting educated about it, as well as folks that are currently occupying office, right? I think that one of the confusing parts for lawmakers was understanding how to define the term broker. But there's certainly a lot of educating that needs to be done. One of the things I found interesting, and I'd love to hear if there's questions in the audience, was the crypto community is typically a pretty, I guess you could say, a fractured group, right? You have your Bitcoin maximalists, your Ethereum maximalists. Everybody's a maximalist, right? Or an altcoin person. But I think it demonstrated the capability that for folks that are proponents of digital assets, there's a lot to gain from solidarity. There's an enormous amount to gain from solidarity in the space. So I think that when we come together as a unified force for the greater adoption of digital assets and blockchain technology, it really shows gave a glimpse of maybe the sway that we might be able might be able to have in Washington, D.C. with regulators and policymakers. But there's obviously still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, and it's very exciting times. It's history in the making, but it always goes back to education, and I think we saw some of that with the bill that was, as they said, it was hurried up and pushed through because some people just didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know. And, one of the things too that I think really got brought to the forefront within the crypto space was, hey, look, like we understand, like for most people in the crypto space, it's sort of like a fait accompli. This belief that this technology is so powerful that it will overcome. But I think that ignores the realities of how politics works. That politics is based on trust and relationships in a way that's not hard coded, right? And that takes time. And I think that's frustrating for a lot of cryptocurrency proponents, the fact that it does take time. And I think that, one of the things that really kind of got brought to light within the crypto community was the lack of coordinated political action across digital asset proponents, right? Like there's a handful of great lobbying organizations that have emerged, and SROs, self-regulatory organizations, Association for Digital Asset Markets, ATOM, of which Sarson Funds is a member, run by Michelle Bond. We know was doing a lot of behind the scenes work on Capitol Hill, and the Blockchain Association as well. However, I was listening on Twitter to a live conversation with Charles Hoskinson from Cardano, and even he was kind of taken aback with the fact that it's like, is there not a list somewhere of crypto-friendly or blockchain-friendly candidates for office that we can support? Yet all these people on crypto Twitter kind of asking, where do I send my money, right? Like, how do I support this? And there was a bit of an echo, right? There really wasn't any organization that over the last few years, political action organization that had been created. And I think that has really driven the impetus, I think, for the crypto community to really take the next step in the evolution of this movement and understand that there's some political realities that need to be addressed. So, I was quite happy to see at least that get brought to the forefront. Let's start taking some questions. What do you say, Ivan?
Let's see. It seems to have one here, right from Marshall. Marshall Kills.
Yeah, what do we got?
As crypto becomes more widely accepted, what's the outlook for additional companies to accept as a form of payment? Understanding the growth potential, how does one justify using it in such a manner?
That's a great question. My personal belief was that wide-scale transactional use of cryptocurrency and wide-scale adoption to the everyday consumer would come through the merchants, right? I either thought through merchant service providers or through consumer rewards programs or loyalty rewards programs. And we've certainly seen the emergence of that in loyalty rewards programs with like the whole NFT phenomenon, right? But I think that obviously payment services like, obviously Jack Dorsey's Square are taking the lead and pushing this forward, and Visa and MasterCard also getting into understanding how the blockchain payment networks can work. I think that's really important in terms of driving forward, transactional adoption. One thing that I would like to caution on is that, look, we all understand Bitcoin is like the big dog on the block, and that goes without question. However, I do like to caution sort of the maximalist crowd to a degree, and that it's not the end all be all. There's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there, and if you really want to take a long-term view over what the adoption curve is going to look like, I think you're going to see a stratification of these types of digital assets, right? Certain assets will be used for certain things, right? I'll give you a theoretical example of what the future might look like. You're going to have Bitcoin as your long-term store of value, right? That's going to be your savings. Something like Ethereum or maybe, depending on, how Cardano ends up, hopefully being used one day by somebody, starts to, emerge in the market. But you'll have smart contracts for all intents and purposes, empowering global finance. But still, you're not gonna buy a pack of gum, right, with crypto or with Bitcoin, but you might with another crypto. And this is, I hate to harken back on this, but I think I've made no secret of the fact of my affinity for Doge. All right, Doge satisfies to me a lot of requirements for a daily transactional currency. It's widely liked, it's friendly, it's fast, and it's cheap. And I think that in the not too distant future, it's not too out of the realm of possibility to see that being your tipping currency or your small purchase daily transactional currency. I know Mark Cuban certainly agrees with me. I don't think Pomp or Jason Williams agree with me too much on this, but that's okay. Um, but I think that as the space starts to develop, you're going to see certain tokens fit into different slots to answer that question. So from a transactional use point, I think you're going to have your transactional tokens, and it may or may not be Bitcoin, but I'm thinking probably not. That's going to be your savings account.
Great question, and there was actually and thank you for that answer. There was another question that we got, and you kind of talked about it, but maybe you can elaborate about. And the question is, what do you think about meme cryptocurrencies like Doge?
All right. Well, you have to have a bit of caution, right, with like the meme tokens, right? But they do satisfy, I think, a lot of what's important about crypto, and what's actually important about what I think what the core definition of money is, really, to a degree, right? So, like, for money, you really only need like three things. You got to have an element of scarcity. It has to be, you have to have it in circulation, right? In order to make it have it in circulation, it has to have a community. And Doge is an organic community, right? There's no Doge company. And I think that's part of its power, is that it's a transnational, cross-border community of people that accept Doge, right? No one's forcing you to accept it. It's not a government forcing you to accept it as a local currency. So I think the community aspect of the meme tokens, and I think actually Doge has moved past like the meme category. I think maybe having being a meme category is sort of like a step to legitimacy, right? Where 90% or more of like meme tokens aren't going to make it past like a short time period. But I do think that ones that do stand to last, because those communities have been developed into an organic unit of users that are willing to transact, and I think that it represents a real powerful force, and I think it's a great thing. One of the things I think people really look past on Doge. Doge helps crypto and its wider adoption. There's no question about it, right? So like I think part of Bitcoin's success, maybe a little bit, can be paid to Doge. What do we have? What do we have coming up next? I see a bunch of questions coming in the queue here, Ivan.
Yes, another good question here from Garrett. What crypto is most user-friendly for a company to create its own currency on top of?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say back to like the stratification conversation that we were having earlier. I think it would have a lot to do with your industry, so to speak, and what the purpose of that would be. Ostensibly, if you're doing complex financial transactions, you're going to want to build apps on like a smart contract platform that can be monetized. So perhaps, for certain industries, that would be Ethereum. But for others, like consumer rewards programs, right? Um, there's an element of value already in like consumer rewards programs. You get discounts, you get coupons, right? But they're not really efficiently monetized. So maybe that's something like Doge. But there are also like ones that are gearing more towards the enterprise, like Casper Networks, another one that we're a big fan of here at Sarson Funds. So I think a lot of it's going to have to depend on how like the community of developers end up growing. And I think it's going to have a lot to do with the specific type of industry you're in and what types of transactions. I mean, I envision that you're probably going to have layers, right? If you're a large company, you're going to have layers of different tokens you use for different things, and then maybe they all funnel up to Bitcoin as your long-term store. Just depends on the use case you're using it for.
Thank you. Thank you. Simon here would like to know, how did you first find out and or get into crypto?
Oh man, that takes me back a little bit. I don't know if there was like a first striking moment, but I think that maybe my first the first foray into trying to understand what was going on in a changing and increasingly borderless world was when I left my government service and started to catch Silicon fever. So I was an intelligence officer, for those of you that don't know, and I knew that something was changing in the global dynamics, and that physical borders were becoming less important. And having an understanding of it economics, anyhow, understanding that central banking has its flaws, and they were starting to emerge very, very quickly, especially as the internet age started to mature. So it was, during my experience in Silicon Valley that we started hearing whispers of crypto and started doing my own investigation, my own research myself. One of the things where I started to really play with it was in the early days of Robinhood, believe it or not. And what I found very fascinating is a feature that Robinhood I thought was fantastic, but they no longer have, I think, due to regulatory concerns. But I don't know if you guys remember this, or like 4 or 5 years ago, or whenever Robinhood first came out, on the cryptocurrency trading page, where it's all neon, right? And everybody thought that was kind of cool. There was a live chat feed on every crypto. And that it didn't last very long, but I was fascinated. I was like, holy smokes, like here on that same interface that I'm watching the price action, I'm seeing a live stream of chat on that particular asset. And that got me hooked. And I think that was probably the moment right then and there. I'm like, okay, something really sticky is going on here. I almost wish they still had it, but of course, people abuse those types of things, and had nothing but it was like 80% people trying to shill a particular crypto, but like they started, people starting to share trading information and people starting to learn in ways that they weren't taught in school, and it really sparked an interest in me. So that was sort of my evolution of how I got into digital assets. And then when we started Sarson Funds, my background is in overall across the different things I've done is in community building and education, so to speak. So we wanted to fill that gap, and I thought that was a natural place. So it's been a fun ride ever since.
That's just I can only imagine the FUD that was happening in those chats when.
Oh, it was nonsense. That was like the first time I saw like the rocket emoji, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?"
We have another great question here from Alan. Any comments on P2E NFT games? It's a very big potential scene. Oh, since bear or bull people will not stop playing and only give them more reason to play to earn sats.
Play to earn?
Yes.
Well, the metaverse in general, and I'm going to put gaming and the metaverse sort of in one bucket for a moment. I guess they kind of live hand in hand. Has enormous potential. All right. I think even I was sort of a naysayer on e-gaming for a long time. Right. So I can't believe this economy is that huge, but it is, and it's only going to get bigger. And if you if you ever read Ready Player One, it's a fantastic book and like a slightly less fantastic movie, you'll see that this is the natural step of the evolution of human machine interaction, where little by little your life and how you experience it is going to be slowly more embedded into an augmented or virtual world. And they're going to merge, and it's going to be fast and furious, but almost it might even be seamless really at the end of the day. And there's a variety of different uses for that. So I think that conceptually understanding how big the space is hard to do because it's enormous. So there's an enormous amount of value that can be in that's more than just like I won a game. It's all that interactive data that you're producing, right? That's the funny thing about data in general is like it sort of has the opposite economics of like a diamond, which is rare, and like if you had tons of diamonds and they were easy to obtain, the value of each individual diamond or the diamonds go down. However, with data, it's the exact opposite. The more data you produce, the more valuable data becomes because of what you can do with it. So I think that just purely your interactive data, and you can even translate this and take this further beyond just like play to earn. How about just like interacting with the things you interact with now? Right? The way you use certain apps. I mean, obviously you got Facebook and all sorts of social media platforms monetizing it at a level that you probably don't even understand, right? All sorts of data. And not just like you liking and posting things, but how you scroll, right? There are algorithms that can sort of detect like where you pause on that scroll, and all like that data is going to be monetized even further. So I think the more that we can harness it at an individual level, the better society is going to be, because right now it's sort of siloed amongst a few organizations that really control access to ways in which they can then monetize the data. So we'll see how that translates. I know that we talk about self-sovereignty and data sovereignty a lot at Sarson Funds, and that's a really important part, I think, of the greater cryptocurrency and digital asset narrative, is being able to securely own your own data and then being able to subsequently monetize that in a way in which you see fit. And I think that's going to unlock a lot of value for people. So we'll see how that plays out. I mean, we got actually we have a launch coming in September, right? Crown Sterling's quantum resistant encryption token. Bitcoin.com is launching it on the exchange in September. That was actually a press release from this morning from Bitcoin.com. So we're excited to see that, because we think that represents an enormous amount of potential in the whole data sovereignty movement. And actually, this is probably a good time to mention for folks on our next AMA. I'm actually going to have the founder of Crown Sterling, the Crown Sovereign Token, Robert Edward Grant, on the show, and we're really thrilled to have him. He's going to be dialing in from Newport Beach, California, and he's one of the smartest human beings I've ever encountered, and just a fascinating individual with a lot of big ideas, who's had a lot of success even before his foray into digital assets. But he's a theoretical mathematician, so we're really excited to have him. But to answer Alan's question, I see that space is just with enormous potential still that has yet to be really tapped into fully.
It's an exciting space, and looking forward to speaking with Robert next time. I'm sorry.
No worries. I think we got a few more questions coming up too, right?
Yes. We have another one from Simon here. Why do you think people are hesitant to crypto?
I mean, for a variety of reasons. People are fearful of things they don't understand, and that's natural. And there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the world. I think more so now than there was previously, and probably more so to come. People are unsure of the future, not only for themselves personally and financially, but from a broader macroeconomic perspective. So, there's always that fear of the unknown. But this harkens back to what I was talking about at the beginning of our session, Ivan, that there's a big gap to bridge. And it's up to the crypto community to really work hard at not just trying to out-meme and out-shout people, but to really extend a hand of knowledge and understanding and speak in a language that's not condescending, in a language that people, in words that people understand, and be able to provide everyday context so that folks can come to their own decision. Money's a belief system, after all. You can't sell somebody on crypto. It's a belief system, and it's a belief that they need to come to on their own. So you need to show them ways in which they can do that. So it's a big responsibility, I think, for people in our space to take that seriously and not dismiss or write people off that are fearful of crypto, and not make fun of them or try to harass them or dismiss them. This is only going to work with more people. And in order to get more people, you need to be understanding of how other folks digest information. And you need to be able to present that in a way that's understandable to folks. And it doesn't mean you have to dumb it down. You just have to put it in a context of where they're coming from. So put your feet in somebody else's shoes for a minute, and then maybe take that type of perspective. And I like to challenge the cryptocurrency community to start doing more of that, because I do think that's one of the areas that, in general, the crypto crowd really falls short in sometimes, is being able to explain this. And I hate to pick on my parents for this, but like I write my content with my parents in mind. My parents are smart folks. They're business owners, but you know what? They're busy running their business, and they're busy enjoying their later years. So I have them in mind, of someone that's not like a crypto nut, like, a lot of us might be, but that know it's something that maybe came from just before, we transitioned from an analog to a digital age, and just needed explained in a way that they can see that there's value there that they should consider an allocation to.
Very good, thank you. We have a question here from Garrett. Can you talk more about silicon fever, symptoms, diagnosis, etc.? I thought it had a different name, but we'll go with silicon fever.
Oh, that was sort of the time where, that's where I started to take, the red pill, I guess, so to speak. Or was it the blue one? I keep on forgetting. But I just left government service and was trying to find my way in the world. And when I started to explore high tech, and started to try to build things on my own, I realized that, in a feverish way, that there was something there that I was missing. And that's what led me out to Silicon Valley for a few years to really get involved and, educate myself and just be totally ingrained in the tech community. And that's what started my path down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
I can relate to the fever. That's yeah. Even with crypto,
Yeah,
like
yeah, you
just
were with me on
discover.
part of that journey, Ivan.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much, and you don't want to miss any of it, and you so just spend time on it, and next thing you know is you're feeling sick because you haven't been sleeping.
Yeah, yeah, it becomes a passion, totally.
We have a question here from Liam. How can enterprises adopt the capabilities of Ethereum and decentralized finance?
Well, I guess it depends on, what part of the enterprise. I think, one of the things that I think is really important is, ease of use, right? That's one of the areas I think Ethereum kind of falls short. I know it's open source code, but it's not that easy to build apps unless you really know what you're doing. And having spent a lot of time marketing to the enterprise in one of my previous lives, you need to really break it down into business use cases for enterprise development teams. They need to know what problem that they can solve in their industry, whether it's a logistics company, whether it is whether it's a social media company, or whether it's a, process automation firm. They need to know like how they can serve their customers at the end of the day, not how cool the tech is, but how easy it is to serve their customers. So like teams in like within IBM and Oracle or Amazon Web Services, or even Walmart, right? They need to understand how they can serve their customers. So they need to have rapidly buildable business apps. And one of the projects we really love, I mentioned it earlier in our session, is Casper Labs, Casper Network, where they're providing a platform for the enterprise to rapidly build in a no-code environment blockchain-based applications that can serve their business needs. So I think that, even just beyond the whole DeFi, decentralized finance world, I think that the more smart contract and application building platforms, can start to look and feel like something easy to use, I think the more dynamic you're going to see the space change into how these enterprises can serve, their partners and their customers. You need to solve a business problem, easily without hiring your own, additional tech team that needs to learn a new language.
It is like a new language. You have a fan in the audience. Simon would like to know, what's your favorite movie?
Oh man, my favorite movie.
Yes.
Oh, that's gonna. Well, I guess I'll give like maybe one or two here that like fit the bill. It's kind of like on a rotating basis. Um, I mean, I'd have to say the Terminator,
The Terminator.
right? Kind of tells you where AI can go in like in a bad sense, but I got a passion for cheesy '80s action, so I'd have to say that's probably right up there. But thank you very much, Simon, for the question.
Thank you for sharing. Another question from Alan here. Back to the topic we had at the beginning of the call. U.S. government taking crypto innovations. The recent bill that was passed in Senate was not a good sign for the crypto space. What would be a good move that the U.S. government to fully adopt crypto?
Well, I think I might differ a little bit on this one. I don't know if it was not a good sign for the crypto space. I happen to think it's actually a positive sign for the crypto space that it's at such a forefront of the conversation, right? It's not here's the deal with any bill that's passed. It'll never be a good bill. It'll never be a perfect bill, right? But the fact that it is, at the front of the conversation, I think is really important. And at least, a lot of the regulators and a lot of like the government agencies and parts of the federal government, they were waiting to have Congress do something so that they could start to figure out how to implement or not implement what the Congress passes. You're not going to have regulators just doing things on their own. they need to wait for legislation. I mean, heck, the SEC, Hester Pierce, and now Gary Gensler, for a long time now, we're saying we want legislation first before we can rule and make a decision. So I think it gets the ball rolling at least, and I don't think it's a bad sign necessarily at all. I think it's an important one because one, it motivated the crypto community to finally realize there's something other than whatever coin they're shilling, right? There's something bigger in the space to talk about. And two, it gets the conversation going in Washington, D.C. And, don't forget, in order for a bill to become law, if you remember, from the PBS Day Schoolhouse or School of Rock or Schoolhouse of Rock, there, it's got to go. Now it's got to go to the House, and the House is a little bit more wild than the Senate, so we'll see how that plays out. And there are plenty of crypto lobbying organizations and folks that are having conversations with members of the House now, because there are a lot of people that weren't happy with the language, but it makes the conversation continue. So what can the U.S. government do? Well, I think I'd turn that question back to you. What can you do, right? You can vote. You can vote for folks, and you can support candidates that have an understanding of blockchain technology and ones that aren't tied to special interest groups. That's what you can do. So that's where I'm going to throw that challenge out, is like not what the U.S. government can do, but what can you do to influence the U.S. government?
Yeah, vote and get involved.
Absolutely.
What's before I take one more question here? What is there's something going on in the news, and there's always something going on in the news, but there was something on the Wall Street Journal you wanted to touch upon today.
Oh, I think we got to that. I think there's another question here on what sectors to watch. So I'll read that. What sectors of crypto other than DeFi and the metaverse are worth watching? Watch what central banks do. The CBDC conversation, central bank digital currencies, have been quietly proceeding under the noise of the crypto infrastructure legislation, under the noise of NFTs, under the noise of the metaverse, and under the noise of Bitcoin. So I think this is going to drive what governments end up doing. And there's a good way to do this, and there's a bad way to do this. So if you want to look at what a bad way to do this is, you can take a look at China and what they're doing with their digital yuan. And they're effectively making their new digital currency the ultimate tool of state surveillance. But then you can look at what other CBDCs are doing in some of the Western countries and how they're trying to implement. I think it's going to drive the conversation for digital asset adoption much further than I think people realize. So one space I would keep an eye on, because it'll be quiet until it's not, is the central bank digital currency conversation in space. I think it's going to have a lot of implications on the broader crypto community. And that brings us to the top of the hour here, Ivan. I think it was another great session. And thanks, everybody, for joining in. We had a lot of great questions. I think we had more than last time. So we had some great viewership today. So I was really happy to see that. And don't forget, next time, and we'll be posting it on, I think it's, I don't know the exact date. I don't have it right in front of me. I don't want to mess up my screen right now. But our next session is going to have Robert Edward Grant from Crown Sterling. He's going to talk about personal data sovereignty and the Crown Sterling, Crown Sovereign token, which is going to be a fascinating conversation. And we're delighted to have him here on our AMA. So with that, Ivan, you have any final words, bud?
No, appreciate everyone stopping by, sharing your questions, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody.